Hello, everyone. I'm Nikki Zizaza. It is a case that has received national attention for years after the Serial podcast brought it into the spotlight. The murder of Hae Min Lee and the conviction of Adnan Syed. Now, after 23 years in prison, Syed has been released. In this special edition of CBS News Baltimore, we will take you through the case, what officials and the lawyers involved are saying, and what comes next. We want to begin with the timeline of the events. Lynn Bowie has the breakdown.
Let's take a look back so we can all remember how we got here. This, of course, all begins with this woman, 18-year-old Hae Min Lee. In 1999, Lee left Woodlawn High School in Baltimore County and was never seen alive again. Someone found her body buried in a shallow grave in Leakin Park nearly a month later. Then in 2000, Syed was found guilty of murder, robbery, kidnapping, and false imprisonment. He was sentenced to life in prison. But fast forward 14 years when a podcast called Serial premiered. It focused on Syed's case, bringing in new witnesses and casting doubt on the testimony that led to his conviction. And then in 2016, a victory for Syed. After several hearings, a judge in Maryland decided to grant him a new trial. However, that victory quickly turned to another defeat in 2019 when the Court of Appeals decided Syed would not get a new trial after all. Adding insult to injury, the Supreme Court declined to hear his case. Now, all of that brings us to today, a renewed push to get Syed out of prison. Prosecutors asked a judge to vacate Syed's conviction last week, and Syed walked out of the courthouse and headed home. Back to you.
Baltimore State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby held a press conference after the much-anticipated hearing, where she talked about why the state decided to take this step and what comes next. Take a look.
Good afternoon, everyone. God is good. Since the inception of my administration, I've made it clear that the sole mission of my office is to safeguard communities in Baltimore through the effective prosecution of crime. And in order to fulfill this mission, our prosecutors have been sworn to not only aggressively advocate on behalf of victims of crime, but when the evidence exists, to exonerate those that have been falsely accused or convicted. The public has to know that justice is the only barometer of success for my office, and justice over convictions is not only our mantra, but our mission. And since the start of the administration, my office has paid this mission forward, which is why we created the first conviction integrity unit in the entire state of Maryland, a unit dedicated to reinvestigating claims of actual innocence, a unit that is now a national model replicated throughout the country and the state, and has already successfully exonerated 12 innocent men who cumulatively served 300 years in prison for crimes they did not commit. Justice over convictions is ultimately the reason why my office created in December of 2020 a sentencing review unit where my prosecutors review and modify the excessive sentences of juvenile lifers in the elderly prison population to ensure racial equity in a state that disproportionately incarcerates more Black and brown people than any other state in the nation. This unit, which is only the second in the state of Maryland to exist, is headed by former Deputy Public Defender of Maryland, Becky Feldman. We've already modified and recommended the release of over 40 individuals, none of whom have reoffended since the inception of the unit. My sentencing review unit is responsible for the year-long collaborative investigation into this case and today's motion to vacate the conviction of Adnan Syed. The vacature statute, which was drafted, lobbied, testified to in Annapolis by my office, despite the opposition of almost every one of my colleagues across the state, with the exception of Aisha Braveboy, this vacature statute is responsible for today's outcome. As we are all aware, Adnan Syed stood trial twice for the homicide of 17-year-old Hae Min Lee. A jury in 2000 found him guilty of premeditated murder, kidnapping, robbery, and false imprisonment, and the judge sentenced him to life plus 30 years in prison. Syed ultimately appealed that decision again and again. For the past 7 years, my office provided permission for the original and appellate jurisdiction over the case to the Attorney General's office under the direction of Brian Frosh, where, as all you guys are all aware, Both trial judges and appellate courts denied Syed's post-conviction motions. In 2018, Maryland's Court of Special Appeals determined Syed was entitled to a new trial, only for the state's top court to overrule that opinion the following year. And then finally, appealing to the U.S. Supreme Court, the review was declined in 2019. The way that it happened this time, in 2021, Syed's attorneys, Erica Suter, who you will hear from momentarily, from the Office of the Public Defender, appealed to my office and brought the case to the attention of Becky Feldman in my sentencing review unit after the Juvenile Restoration Act passed in April of 2021. This act allows people convicted of crimes as juveniles to request a modification of sentence after they have served more than 20 years incarceration. Mr. Syed qualified because he spent more than 22 years. Becky Feldman subsequently led nearly a year-long exhaustive investigation reviewing the substantive facts of this case, where several problematic issues were presented, and thereafter leading my office to file a motion to vacate the conviction of Adnan Syed. Vacature, as we all have learned today, is a legal mechanism that once again was drafted, lobbied, testified to, and was integral in ensuring that my office was integral in ensuring that it passed, which provides prosecutors with a legal mechanism for the removal of a conviction based off of newly discovered evidence that calls into question the integrity of a conviction based on the interests of fairness and justice. Through our review, our reinvestigation revealed that the original prosecutors and the subsequent prosecutors in the Attorney General's office failed to disclose relevant information about alternative suspects, one of whom threatened to kill the victim and had motive to kill the victim, and both of whom had a pattern of violence against women. Our investigation suggests that the two suspects may have been involved individually or may have been involved together in the death of that beautiful young woman. Once again, through our review, our investigation uncovered that one of the suspects threatened Miss Lee, saying he would make her disappear. He would kill her. We also received information that provided motive for that same alternative suspects. That information was never disclosed to the defendant and is the basis of the Brady violation that the judge has deemed. We also determined in our investigation that one of the alternative suspects was violent towards a woman and forcibly confined her before Adnan Syed's trial. The other suspect has had a history of sexual assault. None of that information was provided to defense counsel by either the original prosecutor or the Attorney General's office, where the original case file still sits. It was through our investigation we also learned that during the original investigation, one of the suspects were improperly cleared by investigators based on faulty polygraph tests and a faulty cell site evidence that was used against Adnan Syed that simply wouldn't stand up in court today. And finally, we found that the previous misconduct of one of the homicide detectives in the Syed's case, a detective that was negatively implicated in my office's first exoneree, Malcolm Bryant, contributed to a wrongful conviction in a separate 1999 murder case. For all of those reasons, my office petitioned the court jointly with Erica Suter from the Office of the Public Defender and asked that Adnan Syed be given a new trial where he is adequately represented and the latest evidence presented in the interests of fairness and justice, which is and has always been the hallmark of my administration as State Attorney for Baltimore City. At this stage, the trial has been set in for a new trial date because we're not yet declaring Adnan Syed is innocent, but we are declaring that in the interests of fairness and justice, he is entitled to a new trial. And because this is an ongoing case, there are limits to what I can say in this matter, but it is imperative that we start the process of securing a new trial with adequate representation for Mr. Syed to ensure that the family of Ms. Hae-Min Lee knows with full confidence that the person responsible for her death and the death of their loved one will be held accountable. Ms. Lee's family deserve closure. They deserve justice, and we intend to fight for that. And while this is just one step and a long fight to make sure the legal system in Baltimore is fair and just for all, I want to reiterate to the residents of Baltimore, as I always have done, that so long as I'm at the helm as State Attorney, I will remain committed to ensuring and pursuing justice and equality for all under the law, which includes victims, witnesses, accusers, and the accused. I said this 4 months following the death of Freddie Gray, and I'm saying it 4 months before the end of my term. Justice is always worth the price paid for its pursuit. Thank you. Any questions?
Question. I know in court there was not a lot of detail given about these potential other suspects. How confident are you that these suspects are able to be part of a new trial, accessible,
So I kind of addressed that in my remarks. I cannot, because it's an open and pending matter, I cannot talk about the substance of the case. But I can tell you that we are working with the Baltimore Police Department, and it is an active investigation.
Will that be wrapped up within the 30 days to file a new trial?
So what I can tell you is the investigation is separate and apart from the 30-day mandate. What we are currently waiting for is DNA analysis. And so we are going to try to expedite that. That is with reference to whether or not Adnan's case will be dismissed, a no prost, and we would certify his innocence, or whether or not the case is set in for trial. If the DNA evidence comes back, and I'll just be candid, and it's Adnan Syed, then clearly, there's implication that we have to proceed. That still entitles him to a fair and just trial. But in any event, we're going to wait for the DNA to come back, and we'll make that determination at that stage.
Would someone like to speak on behalf of the family before they leave?
Maddie asked a good question. What happens if that DNA testing is not finished in 30 days?
Yeah, what's the plan?
So, I mean, we'll meet that hurdle when it comes, but that's something that we're attempting to expedite.
In that same vein, though, I mean, with the star witness's credibility being impeached and the cell phone data no longer being deemed reliable, is a new trial even possible with the evidence that you have?
So, I mean, at this stage, what we want to do is we feel, again, all of these facts go to the integrity of the conviction, which is problematic. And so it's a matter of, and I don't want to interject my opinion, I can just do it based off of the facts once the DNA.
So my name is Steve Kelly. I'm the victim's rights lawyer. Steve Kelly. I'm the victim's rights lawyer for the Lee family, the family of Hae Min Lee. And I have an official statement on behalf of the family.
Here, real quick. Sorry. Hold it.
The family is principally interested in justice. For the past 22 years, the world and they have been told that Adnan Syed is the murderer of their daughter, sister, Hae Min Lee. They are disappointed that today's hearing happened so quickly and with virtually no notice, and that the court acted the way it did, and that the prosecutor's office made the recommendation the way that they did. This family is interested in the pursuit of justice. They want to know more than anybody who it was that killed Hae Min Lee. I'm a victim rights attorney. I've been doing this work for 20 years. My sister was murdered, and I was one of the people who helped pass these laws that permit victims to have notice and the right to be present and the right to be heard at hearings like this. The way the state's attorney's office acted in this case is just inexcusable. They knew about this for more than a year. It was clear from their conduct. They absolutely did not want to afford this victim any meaningful opportunity to address this motion. My clients, all they wanted was information. They want the truth to come out. If the truth is that someone else killed their sister, daughter, they want to know that more than anybody. They were shut out of the legal process by the court and the state's attorney's office, and it was inexcusable. It's a violation of Maryland law, and my clients are exploring their options with regard to appeal.
Do you think that it would have changed if they had been able to be here in court today? Do you think that would have changed the judge's ruling or the process?
I think that it could have very well have if they had been informed as to the basis of the motion, which they were never provided with. The judge did not allow me to speak. She invited my client to speak, did not even allow me to advise my client, and she made him talk before he heard any arguments. So he had no idea what the motion was about when he was asked to give a statement. All they want is information, and they deserve that, really. Any responsible prosecutor's office would have sat down with this family and talked to them about this. This prosecutor's office was interested in one result and one result only. The timing, I would say, is very, very suspicious, and there's no rational basis for the timing that I can see, other than, well, we'll leave it to that. But yeah, so the issue is we don't know, because the family was never advised as to what this motion was really truly about. And had they been, then they may well have supported this action. They want the truth. They're interested in the truth, and so they very well may have supported the release of Mr. Syed had they understood the basis. My name is Steve Kelly. I'm with the law firm of Sanford, Heisler, Sharp, based in Baltimore. Kelly, correct.
I'm sorry, apologies if I missed the top of your remarks. What have you heard from Lee's family in reaction to this?
They're deeply disappointed with the result, only because they're disappointed with the process more than the result. They were not given the
Evidence comes in, it will be much more definitive.
What confidence do you have that these kinds of Brady violations aren't still happening in your office?
So let me be clear, it was in my office.
The state's attorney's office.
But yes, I mean, I think we have open discovery. I think that we train our prosecutors, and the mantra and mission and vision of my office, it's very different than what it's been in the past, right? Our mission and vision is justice over convictions. For a very long time, people would measure the success of a prosecutor's office based off of convictions. We don't do that in the city of Baltimore. We go on the basis of justice.
How do you respond to the victim's brother saying he felt blindsided by this when the investigation was going on for a year? He had a week's notice.
So no, I wrote what he said down. He basically said he somewhat felt betrayed, and you can understand why, right? I mean, you have some sort of resolution, and you believe that you have closure, and the case comes back up, and it rips a whole new sort of, wound that has healed, and that you think has healed, and so I understand his frustration and his disappointment, but I also understand the importance as the administrator of the criminal justice system to ensure equality and justice and fairness that is entitled to the defendant as well.
That was
how this case hit your radar.
This is the last question, guys.
Had it not been for the publicity, would you have gotten with this man?
So we were approached by the Office of the Public Defender and Erica Suter, and she'll talk to you. They wanted to come to us, and they came to us and approached us to do, under the JRA, they wanted us to make a modification of the sentence. He still qualifies for a reduction and a modification of his sentence, but once we got the file and we were in possession of it, and we started to look at it, we saw several problematic issues. And so then we began an investigation that went beyond just having a JRA motion in which that conviction would stand. Based off of our conviction integrity unit and reinvestigations into claims of actual innocence, we actually reinvestigated the matter. Thank you, guys.
information as to why the state filed this motion after 20 years of standing by this conviction. So the family just wanted information. They wanted to know why this motion was being filed, what the basis was. We requested in court papers today that the family be given 7 days to come to Baltimore to learn more about this motion and to speak meaningfully on that. The court denied that very reasonable relief. So the family is disappointed with the way they were treated. They're disappointed with the process. They want to, more than anybody, to have a person who killed Haymon Lee brought to justice. And so if that is not Mr. Syed, then they're open to the possibility of anybody else who actually did it being prosecuted. Thank you.
All right, hello. My name is Desmond Perry.
And you're a family friend?
I'm a good, close friend of Adnan. I was incarcerated with him. I've been home now for 4 months. I spent 20 years with Adnan. He's a very good friend of mine. I love him to death. It was like a weight lifted off my shoulders to see him released and freed today, knowing that he was innocent the whole time. He's an impeccable human being. Just a wonderful person. And hopefully the world will get to see that real soon.
How was it spending that time with him these many years, helping him maintain his sanity?
I know, it was the opposite way around. Adnan helped us. And no one would probably believe this, going through everything that he went through, but he was an assistance to us. When I came into prison, I was 18 years old. Adnan took me under his wing, taught me Islam, taught me Arabic, taught me how to read the Quran. He took care of every individual that came into that prison system. Everybody. He would give clothes and shoes and food to whomever. He would cook for people. This is the type of individual he was. He is, excuse me, but he was to us.
What message do you send to the public about this release or this justice?
The message I would send to the public is there's many more men just like him who are innocent. There are many more men just like him who are innocent that the justice system did wrong. Just like we saw today, all of the investigation that the prosecutors did to see and to prove that, you know, they had evidence to show that he wasn't the one who committed this crime. So it's many more men just like that, and it's unfortunate the American justice system is the way that it is now.
Anybody else, guys? Anything else?
No, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
When we come back, we will take a look at the aftermath of the hearing and sit down with the lawyers involved in the case. Stay with us. Welcome back. WJZ was at the courthouse when Adnan Syed was released. WJZ investigator Mike Helgren broke down the hearing, and Avajoy Burnett got some reactions from the public.
Adnan Syed is going home after being behind bars for more than 20 years. At the age of 17, he was convicted of the 1999 murder of Hae Min Lee, his former girlfriend at Woodlawn High School. Prosecutors are not asking to dismiss the case, but at this point, Syed will remain on home detention, awaiting a new trial. His old conviction has been vacated by the judge.
Ask that Adnan Syed be given a new trial where he is adequately represented and the latest evidence presented in the interests of fairness and justice.
In court, Lee's brother wept and said he felt blindsided and that he's lived a nightmare for years. Attorney Steve Kelly represents the victim's family.
They are disappointed that today's hearing happened so quickly and with virtually no notice, and that the court acted the way it did, and that the prosecutor's office made the recommendation the way that they did. This family is interested in the pursuit of justice. They want to know more than anybody who it was that killed Hae Min Lee.
But supporters of Syed say it is not justice to keep him locked up. He continues to maintain his innocence. Prosecutors say they discovered evidence about a suspect who threatened to kill Lee that was never disclosed to the defense, and of a second suspect as well. They say they were shocked, along with evidence of possible police wrongdoing, faulty cell phone records, and unreliable witnesses. Syed's attorney told the judge their sympathy goes out to the family of the victim, but he is innocent.
Cheers erupted outside the courthouse as Adnan Syed walked out. A judge announced he should be released because there is grounds to vacate his murder conviction. More than 100 people packed into a courtroom to hear the judge's ruling. Among them were two men who served time with Syed.
We're just so happy for his family. So happy. I'm telling you, he's the best human being you will ever meet. And we stood on his innocence from day one.
University of Baltimore law professor David Jarrow said it is highly unusual for convictions to be vacated.
It is not always easy to bring the kind of evidence that would allow you to overturn a conviction. This case is somewhat exceptional in that they were able to identify a key piece of evidence that the state's attorney absolutely would be obligated to turn over and apparently did not.
Syed was convicted for killing his ex-girlfriend, Hae Min Lee, in 1999. Her brother told the court that the last 20 plus years have been like a nightmare for his family. It's just tough, he said. Whenever I think it's over, it always comes back. One of the men who served time behind bars with Syed said he feels for the family, but he's convinced that his friend is innocent.
And it's tough. I know it's tough for them.
But on one hand, I can only ask that they accept the ruling and accept what the state presented as evidence to show that it wasn't Adnan.
Next, Mike Helgren sat down with State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby to talk about what led up to Syed's release. Meanwhile, Ava Joy Burnett got a chance to speak with Hae-Min Lee's family lawyer about how they feel about Syed's release.
Rabia Chowdhury, a close friend of Adnan Syed, captured the moment he arrived home in Baltimore County for the first time in 23 years. While Syed's free for now, the decision to ask for a new trial in the murder of Hae-Min Lee is up to Baltimore State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby, who spoke one-on-one with WJZ.
So if that DNA comes back inconclusive, I will certify that he's innocent. If it comes back to 2 alternative suspects, I will certify that he's innocent. If it comes back to Adnan Syed, the state is still in a position to proceed upon the prosecution.
What was that moment like for you when the judge's ruling came down?
I think it was an emotional moment for me because it's come full circle.
Mosby's office was finally able to access the original case file from the Attorney General this past June and uncovered handwritten notes she says identified 2 other suspects, one who threatened to kill Lee. She says the evidence was never turned over to the defense. In a statement, the Attorney General disputed the claim and says there were serious problems with the motion to throw out the conviction.
Why did they sit on this information? Why wasn't this disclosed? Why wasn't it discovered? Because the moment that we discovered it, we turned it over. And so those are questions that you should be asking the Attorney General.
Prosecutors admit cell phone evidence was not reliable and some witness testimony not credible.
To the detective that had a history of issues and was implicated in one of my first exonerations. Like, all of these facts play into the fact that this conviction and the integrity of the conviction should be called into question.
Lee's family criticized Mosby, saying they feel shut out of the justice process.
That is outside the control, my control. I didn't set the hearing date. All we can do is to inform the family, and that's what we did in this case.
In a one-on-one interview with WJZ on Tuesday, attorney Steve Kelly said he signed on at the last minute to represent Hae-Min Lee's family because the legal system left them in the dark.
Why on earth did you change? You know, and just put yourself in. I mean, you're not a lawyer. You're just a grieving family.
When Kelly tried to delay the legal proceedings so that Hae-Min Lee's brother could possibly travel to Baltimore from California, the judge denied the request, but instead allowed young Lee to address the court via Zoom. Lee said his family is still reeling from his sister's murder more than 20 years ago. Going through it again is like a living nightmare, he told the court via Zoom. Lee said he felt blindsided and betrayed by the motion from prosecutors that eventually set Adnan Syed free. Steve Kelly said the family is now in shock.
The fact that makes it hard for them to swallow is the fact that they were kept in the dark. And, you know, they trusted the state, and the state took such an abrupt turn without sitting down and explaining it to them.
As people cheered for Syed when he stepped outside to freedom, some of those same supporters say they feel the pain for Hae-Min Lee's family.
It's heartbreaking.
Doug Colbert was one of the very first attorneys to represent Syed just days after his arrest. Colbert told WJZ he'd always believed in Syed's innocence and is grateful new evidence has come to light.
We've had a lot of close calls where it looked like Adnan would get a new trial. 2 different courts said he should get a new trial, but when I got notice that the prosecutor had filed a motion to vacate the conviction, it was really a dream come true.
Controversy has surrounded the release of Adnan Syed as Maryland's Attorney General took aim at Baltimore State's attorney. In a new WJZ interview, Brian Frosch denied withholding evidence from Syed's defense and questions the timing of Marilyn Mosby's motion to vacate the conviction. WJZ investigator Mike Helgren had the new comments that have 2 top prosecutors at odds with each other.
A war of words between Maryland Attorney General Brian Frosch and Baltimore State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby has erupted over Mosby's successful motion to throw out Adnan Syed's conviction.
We have a crime problem in Maryland. Maryland courts have repeatedly found that Adnan Syed committed this murder. And I have to say, if State's Attorney Mosby were concentrating as hard on trying murder cases and putting murderers behind bars, I think as she has on this case, I think our state would be quite a bit safer.
Frosch made that stinging comment to WJZ following Mosby accusing his office of failing to turn over evidence, handwritten notes contained in boxes of case files, to Syed's defense. Those notes contain interviews with suspects now under investigation for the murder of Hae Min Lee, including one who made a death threat to her.
Why did they sit on this information? Why wasn't this disclosed? Why wasn't it discovered? Because the moment that we discovered it, we turned it over. And so those are questions that you should be asking the Attorney General.
So we did.
They asked us to have access to the file. We gave it to them. That's the extent of our communication on this. It was a surprise to us when she filed the motion. And, you know, I think she should have dug a little deeper about the Brady violations.
Brady violations are when evidence is illegally withheld from a defendant.
We gave them to her. That's where she got them in the first place. We're not withholding them from anybody.
Frosch also questioned the timing of the motion, filed just as Mosby was scheduled to face trial against perjury and fraud charges.
She said her investigation was not complete. So without looking at whether there were Brady violations and without completing her investigation, the timing looks, shall I say, unusual.
Mike Helgren also got a chance to sit down with Adnan Syed's lawyer. Here's what they had to say.
23 years later, we now know what Adnan and his loved ones have always known, that Adnan's trial was profoundly and outrageously unfair.
Erica Suter's passionate words outside the courthouse came from years of fighting. She never gave up on Adnan Syed as his attorney and the director of the University of Baltimore Innocence Project. She sat side by side with Syed as the judge threw out his conviction for the murder of Hae Min Lee.
It was overwhelming. Adnan started to cry. I started to cry. I was thankful for having that minute as the courtroom cleared to try to get myself together. It was surreal. I think it's important and it matters that somebody stand up and say out loud for the whole world to see that Adnan Syed is innocent.
The evidence that cleared him had been in the prosecution's files for years, but wrongfully never turned over to the defense. Notes of interviews with suspects, one of whom threatened to kill Lee.
It is striking and it should shock the conscience, but it is alarmingly common.
We're not withholding them from anybody.
In an exclusive interview with WJZ, Attorney General Brian Frosch denied failing to turn over evidence, leading State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby to slam him for what she called a prosecutorial failure.
It is troubling to me that sort of the conversation is getting shifted to finger pointing. What we know is that there were notes in the prosecutor's file that were handwritten that should have been with the defendant.
Suter says Syed turned down a plea deal from the Attorney General a few years ago. He told her he could not live a lie.
I think what he'd said was that he'd be trading one prison for another. You know, he would have his so-called freedom, but he would now forever be looked at in this way, and he knew that it wasn't the truth.
Now Syed is back with his family, waiting to see whether prosecutors will put him on trial again.
He's really just taking it step by step. He has so many people who support and love him, and he's really taking his time processing everything.
That's all for our coverage right now. Stay tuned to CBS News Baltimore, WJZ TV, and WJZ.com for more updates on this story. Until next time, I'm Nikki Zizaza. Thanks for joining us.